Skeleton Crew Episode 3, very interesting as an astrogation problem. Back on At Attin, the parents of the children are informed that because the kids have crossed the barrier, they're now beyond the jurisdiction of the safety droids. And this means that the children are now left to fend for themselves, as it's revealed that leaving the planet is forbidden. And this raises a few intriguing questions for me, as does At Attin even have any working starships at this point? Because if the officials wanted to leave, could they even do so? And more importantly, if they were even able to build a ship, would they even know how to pilot it in space? As by the sounds of things, it doesn't sound like they have any experience going to space, let alone piloting starships for years and years, so yeah, it's actually kinda wild when you think about it. And in this episode, they also introduce the supervisor. Well, actually more so they just mention it, but they still introduce the idea of it. A figure we can assume to be the leader of At Attin, and the title itself is an interesting choice, as it suggests a more industrial, almost factory-like management style for the planet. I mean, it's the supervisor. I'm curious why they didn't go with like king or president. It makes you wonder if the supervisor is the top leader or maybe perhaps just second in command. Or who knows, it could just be their mayor of their town. We don't really know if it's the title of the whole planet leader, but still, it's very interesting to think about. Either way, this is likely the beginning of the parents questioning why At Attin operates the way it does. And this could lead to some intriguing developments, especially with Wim's dad, who seems like he may be plotting his own way to try and save Wim and friends. Meanwhile, on the space pirate outpost of Borgo Prime, Jod Na Nawood helps the kids break out of the brig with ease, but they refuse to leave without SM-33, and this in turn forces Jod to go back and rescue him alone, maintaining his ruse as a Jedi. And what I really appreciate here is that the show doesn't drag its feet with the reveal, as yes, as it turns out that Jod is actually also Captain Silvo. And well, the writers don't make a big deal out of it. They keep the plot moving along. I also liked before that the kids asked Jod the same questions many of us had. As if you're really a Jedi, why didn't you try to escape before? And Jod claims it's because he didn't have a ship, which in my opinion is still a bit unconvincing, but at least the question is addressed. And well, the real reason and answer gets hinted at later on, but for now, it adds some depth to the mystery of Jod. Still, not all the kids are convinced, especially Fern and KB, who find his behavior far from Jedi-like, but ultimately recognize that he may be their best shot at getting home. We then get a fun escape sequence as the skeleton crew tries to flee from Borgo Prime. And while it's obvious they're going to escape, the show injects some artificial tension here by getting the ship stuck on a fuel line. It's a small but fun twist that adds a little variety to the action, and also shows just how unprepared the kids are to man the ship without SM-33. Jod then takes the kids to a moon to meet his so-called friend, Kh'ymm, a map expert he doesn't fully trust. Still, he sells the idea to the kids as this being their best option for finding the coordinates to At Attin. And this is where we meet Kh'ymm, an owl-cat hybrid creature, a new alien type that we've never seen before in Star Wars. And she's a bit more fantastical than what we're used to seeing in the franchise. More so something I'd say you'd see in Harry Potter than Star Wars, but I don't mind her design really. As after all, Star Wars is a mix of fantasy and sci-fi, so yeah, why not? She also calls Jod by the name Crimson Jack, revealing that he goes by multiple aliases. which raises even more questions about who he really is. And Fern and KB become even more wary of him as they start to question his motives. It's also worth pointing out that Jod's alias of Crimson Jack is of an old pirate that first appeared in the original Marvel run of Star Wars comics back in the 70s, and of which a modern version of the same character has since been reintroduced in the canon comic books too. But yeah, it goes without saying that he bears absolutely no resemblance to Jod, clearly indicating that Jod has a habit of not being who he says he is. Inside Kh'ymm's observatory, the kids then learn a huge piece of the puzzle. As it turns out exactly what we assumed would be the case, At Attin has been isolated from the rest of the galaxy since the Old Republic era, and the kids have absolutely no knowledge of major events like the rise of the Empire, Order 66, the High Republic, or the destruction of Alderaan. And yeah, that makes sense why Kh'ymm has no idea who Luke Skywalker is. He doesn't even know who Anakin Skywalker was. Kh'ymm then also reveals that At Attin is one of 8 legendary planets isolated as part of the Republic's great work. Although apparently 7 of these planets were since destroyed, leaving At Attin as the last survivor. And yeah, this lore is fascinating, and it leaves us wondering what exactly the Republic's great work is about, as we do hear it mentioned on At Attin in the very first episode. As well, I'm also curious about the other 7 mentioned planets. I mean, what were they like, and how does Kh'ymm know for sure that they were destroyed? Like, before this episode, I'm sure she also thought that At Attin was also destroyed as well, so why can't the other planets also still be around? I'm thinking if Skeleton Crew were to get a second season, then yeah, it would be exciting if they were to explore some of these worlds in the future, why not? Anyway, as Kh'ymm then prints out the coordinates to At Attin, Jod at this point realizes that she's stalling for time to set him up for an ambush by the New Republic law enforcement. And this forces Jod and the kids to flee the observatory, but in the process, we also hear yet confirmation that Jod isn't actually a Jedi, as he himself admits that he lied to the kids in order to gain their trust. But he still wants to help them get back home in exchange for a reward. And this raises even more questions, as is Jod at the very least Force sensitive at all? Or was everything Force related that we've seen from him just an act? Like magnets and whatnot? Not to mention, is Jod even his real name? The mystery deepens, and I'm sure we'll get more answers about this very soon. We then afterwards get another escape sequence. Yes, 2 in 1 episode. But this one is more of a chase, if anything, and yeah, it's a fun one. The escape here feels clearly inspired by A New Hope, when the Millennium Falcon is chased by the TIE fighters from the Death Star, except this time it's New Republic X-Wings in pursuit of the Skeleton Crew who are escaping a moon. Just, well, a real moon and not a space station moon. And it's a solid sequence, I suppose. I mean, it's clear the kids' ship is no match for the X-Wings, and at the same time, the X-Wings can't really do much because there's a bunch of kids on board on the ship, so yeah, it adds a nice bit of excitement. Overall, I'd say this was a solid episode. While I think it might have worked better if it had been released as part of a 3-episode premiere, like for example Andor was, but yeah, I still found it enjoyable. The pacing has been great so far, and even though the episode is short, it at least doesn't waste time. It answered many of the questions we've had without dragging things out. Jod is indeed Captain Selvo, he's not a Jedi, and At Attin has been isolated from the galaxy for centuries. The kids are in the dark about the galaxy's history and have no idea about the major events that had shaped it since. And yeah, despite the short runtimes and the kid-friendly tone, Skeleton Crew has been an engaging watch. It's kind of like a live-action Star Wars cartoon with great world building and an intriguing mystery at its core. Now, would these short runtimes work for a more mature Star Wars show? Not really, no. But for here, yeah, it's fine. Would I prefer it to be longer? Sure, but it still works, I suppose. And like I said many times before, the secrets that this show has is what's keeping me interested. As what other secrets does Jod hold, for example? What's the real story behind At Attin? And what other hidden planets might still very much exist? Only time will tell. And that was my take on this episode of Skeleton Crew. Let me know what you all thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you haven't already, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you on the next one.